This article is due to some work by Belinda Rich, who is a local lady who works in the Historical Society and actually has been trawling through quite a few documents. And we've already written one article on the work she's found, and we're now putting up a second one. And it's not quite ironic, and it's probably not a coincidence that Evan told me yesterday he knows of a group that have put up a website which is devoted solely to denying that the standing stone site even exists. That's their job. They've had much of a life, but that's their job, and that's what they want to devote themselves to doing, into denying something. And what's really interesting is this new article which picks up the paper trail from 1955 and goes through to about 1972, really, 69, 72. It shows two things. It shows that before 1955, when 11 members of the Historical Society went on to site and validated and verified that there were stacks of rocks, large, massive rocks that had engravings and markings and shapes on them. When they did that, there hadn't been a person anywhere that denied it existed. And you go through 55 and you see the article, what's written to each other, still the same. Then around about 68, I saw the article, which is the base upon which all the different denials have started. It was an article written by a guy called Marinon or something like that. And he was a teacher, and he went there and had a look, and he wrote to people, and everyone said, well, that's where all the negativity and the doubts began. What's interesting is these doubts began in 1969, 68. The rocks were gone. Even the ones by the dairy were gone. There was nothing left. And what's equally interesting is the article where I've seen so many quoted. When I read the letter he's written, he makes it very clear he has no theory. And he tells us that Isabel McBride came along and said she saw nothing and she had no theory. But what they both said was that both of them persisted and acknowledged it could be real simply because of the wealth and number of legends and old hands accounts of there being a standing stone site there. And that's really important to understand, that the beginning of doubt, which is purely doubt alone, no more, no less than that, just purely doubt, the beginning of doubt comes out of a letter where the guy says, well, I don't really know one way or the other. I've been there and there's not much there. If you looked harder, there's a lot there. But irrespective of that, what we find is that these letters show us what was there at the time. We speak to people, indirectly, of course, by pen, who actually went on site and looked at it, from not just Fordham's take, from others who saw there. And it's really, what really fascinated me the most was this, was a mistake that was made in one of the letters. And it was made by Louise Daly, who was the president of the president of the Richmond Historical Society at the time, and the head office was in Lismore, and she was the one who went out on one occasion and saw the work that Fordham was doing, and in her letters makes it very clear, no issues with what they said, agreed with everyone, all of it. But what was interesting, in 1968, she was obviously getting on a bit, because there she writes to this gentleman who wants to go and look at the site and validates the fact it's legitimate and tells us all about that, then tells us that the property was not owned by the farmers who it was actually owned now by Slater. And she said Slater brought the rocks up and showed us this. Well, here's the point, ladies and gentlemen. Slater not once ever went to that place. He didn't buy it. He didn't sell it. He didn't make an offer on the place. He never owned it. She never met him. But in her memories, as she's getting on now, the site belongs not to the farmer's name that I know, that I said I'd never put up, and I don't, and everyone knows who it is, but she's turned it around. She, who was the president of the Historical Society at the time, in her own head, thinks the whole site belongs to Slater. Now, we've got archaeologists who reckon this guy's a ratbag and an idiot, and other people said he amounts to nothing. But the people there at the coalface, even as their memories of this go cold, because we're going 15 years past when this happened, when she was there, even her memories, even though they've gone cold, the name of Slater appears, but not in a negative way, but a positive way. So that's what I found with these letters. What it tells us, it tells us nothing about the site. But for those who put together this website just to say that the site doesn't exist, I mean, you've got to remember, you're telling me that 11 people signed up and said they were at the site, and they looked at it in 1955, saw where the mound was, saw where the rocks were, and know that it's true. They wrote to people who saw the site with it standing up, and they said it was standing up. The people putting this website haven't seen it in any state. Not standing up, not gone, not partially gone, not completely gone. They've never been there. Yet they know it's nothing happened. Yet all the original people I've spoken to know it's legitimate. All the people who saw it up until 1955 all said it was legitimate. The people from 1955 to 68 said it was legitimate. Then one person who came as a teacher said, oh, I'm not so sure. And soon after, it's not legitimate anymore. Because the one person who went to the site, not when the rocks were on top of it, no, not them. Didn't even go there when the rocks were all stacked in rows, A, B, in rows of A and B, and in two sets, and there was at least 30 rocks there, and they were nominated what they looked like, and pictures were taken of them. All that was recorded. Didn't see that. He came when everything was gone and said, I'm not so sure, and from the end of it, that's the end of the whole story. It sounds to me like as soon as you get a dowdy, the whole thing gets thrown out. Talk about throwing out the baby in the bathwater. God neither get in this equation. So, ladies and gentlemen, all thanks to a lady called Belinda Rich, because without her finding more of the truth that was recorded by historians correctly, and all we're doing is reporting it. And what it tells us is there was a standing stone site there. It was massive. It is real. If those people who claim it doesn't exist, please just look at the truth. Why don't you look at what this lady found? By the way, you know what she got paid for doing it? Nothing. All she was trying to do is show people what really happened here and why that place is so amazing. You sort of get sick of doing this time after time. She found a whole stack of documents before we put them up. Should have been enough. All right, here's more. On my count, there's at least 24 different people that Belinda's found in these two, the article we did before plus this one, who all say it's there. The ones who don't say it's there, McCarthy, I know for a fact, was denied access onto that property because they told me that. They brought it up individually and independent of me. They just brought it up one day. McCarthy said it's not there. Elkins said Slater's a crackpot. They will fight with each other. That's in the letters, you can see it. They couldn't stand each other. I found as a teacher when two people are fighting, you listen to both sides before you hear the argument. And what you will find in the argument by Mariner is that he tried and looked to find information about Slater and found none. Not one. And then he said he tried to find information about the group that he headed, but he couldn't find any. Couldn't find the name of anyone. But later on he goes on and assures us, well, none of the people in that group were qualified. He found no information on Slater. Couldn't find any on the group, but then he tells us the group was a bit dodgy. If you read the letter, it's just full of contradictions. It's just a guy writing to another person, by the way, and that letter's become some sort of document. Shouldn't be. It's just one person saying, I haven't got a clue what's going on. Anyway, that's the truth, and thank you, Belinda. And there's more of the story about the standing stone site, which to this day is not recognised which to this day is left unattended, and which to this day should be put back, but it isn't.